When you look at Army, what stands out about is it? I'm trying to think how long Coach Monken's been there, but their progression and their success that they've had over the last 3 years. Are you at all surprised by how they've just improved year by year?
Not at all, Grant. I mean, I think you look just an extraordinary history. The foundation and the tradition that's here, that's there, and I mean, just annually, to have really, really good players, and this year, I mean, they have quality players and one heck of a football team.
Passing game has improved. Looking at it statistically, almost 200 yards a game through the air. What else jumps out about you or about them that you see on tape?
Who's that?
Their passing game.
Well, they have. I mean, they've been very effective when they needed to, most certainly. I think the part that's really, really clear is how they're an outstanding running team. They're number 2 in the country running the football with really, I mean, superb balance from the quarterback, the 2 fullbacks, and Wolfork and Davidson, 33 and 40, and then certainly with their backs too. And I mean, they're good experience at a good number of spots in their offensive line, and then defensively they've been very active too.
I was reading the wrong statistic line. I was reading the Army defense. I was reading Army defense, and I was like, wow, they're just throwing the ball all over the yard. Arion's play, especially at Colorado State, I know you've talked about market improvements week by week, but that seemed to be his best game he's played so far. How much has he improved from last week to where he was a month ago?
Well, I mean, in all reality, I don't think you can ever I mean, to put it in the right context, when somebody says marked improvement, I think that happens between, year 1 and year 4 maybe. Whether that happens instantly and there's a giant leap, I don't think that doesn't happen. That really doesn't occur. I realize that it makes for sometimes it has to be presented that way, maybe for it to be for followers or at least in the way that it's put forth. He has improved, as our team has, and certainly when we go out this afternoon and we go practice, we need to make more improvement. Will it ever be marked? No, I don't. Not realistically, no. Can it be incremental? Yes, sir, it can. And I think our team, we just got to continue to progress and develop. I mean, really for us. The opportunity that you have to go out on a Tuesday afternoon to work in pads, to prepare for your game this Saturday, and then just individually to try to take guys in areas fundamentally where they have to make, where there has to be something that's noticeable that improves.
When you look back on the tape from the Colorado State game, defensively in that second half, you guys played exceptionally well. Was it a matter of just finding the run fits again, as you've talked about, or was it an overall game, just an attitude that they developed in those final 2 quarters?
Yeah, I think the run fits point on. Whenever you play, and we're going to see it again this week. I mean, an extremely explosive offense that does an excellent job running the ball. They're stout up front, the way they utilize their fullbacks. And if you aren't point on assignment-wise, then there are going to be some really, really big gains, whether it's a fullback popping a trap or a quarterback on a carry or when the ball gets to the perimeter too. And so, when it comes to playing an excellent running team, you have to, that part of it. Then you said attitude too. I think, as you play, you really come to balance with the sense of what's relevant. To be in a position and then to be able to go execute a tackle too. And experience helps. I think as we play, you go throughout a year and younger guys are involved, or maybe guys that are starting to get some initial games under their belt. That helps too.
You mentioned it right there, just game time under their belt, game time out there. Do you think some of the guys on defense and on offense, they just needed some game experience and maybe a few times needed to get popped in the mouth to realize that, yeah, it is D1 football?
I like it. I mean, I can't. Can you come up here and speak that right after you answered that? I mean, it's hey, you're playing at a high level. competitively. And naturally, there's growth that you want to see that does occur, and yet you're going to change every single day, and we hope to change today. We have to transform. When we go out there and where we were this morning when we rolled out of bed in either Vandenberg or Cy John Hall or at home, when we crawl back in there later tonight, I mean, we need to be different as a person and as a player too.
It's always good to improve every day.
There you go.
Final three or three of the final 4 games for you guys in November. November's such an important month for any college football team, but the fact that they're all here at Falcon Stadium, or 3 of the 4 are here at Falcon Stadium, what kind of advantage that give you guys just playing wise and mentally, that you're here, you're in your beds, and everything's comfortable for at least 3 of those weeks?
Well, it's not comfortable. It's not even close to being comfortable. I think whatever the opposite, again, the antonym of what comfortable would be, may be a little more descriptive. And yet we do love playing in Colorado. And we certainly love playing at Falcon Stadium. And yet, again, we just don't want to lose sight of the opportunity that we have to go to work today, because that's exactly what we need to do.
Coach, as you sit here today, at this point in the season, is there anything that kind of stands out to you as something that maybe you didn't expect to happen as far as growth or any individual, performance this season?
Yeah, I don't think so, Sam. I think for us, I think more than anything else has been our persistence, which is going to be necessary once our guys are done playing football too. There's some resolve and certainly some resiliency that's helpful, and how much they have an interest in football. And, I think that's one of those things you really, really try to do as much cross-check and research when it comes to your evaluation of a young person while they're in high school. And yet it is, when you're around players and coaches that really, really absolutely love football, it does make for a different chemistry and a different culture, and because of it, you're able to make some headway.
I want to ask you specifically about Luke Strabel. All-time leading kicker scorer, a record that was about 35 years old or so that he surpassed over the weekend. What's it like having that guy that you can rely on when you need to kick points?
Yeah, he is. And more than anything else is the human being. Pretty level-headed guy, takes a ton of pride in his work, and he's one of those guys, when we go practice this afternoon, is going to go work, see what he can do to improve. I'll say this, I thought the field goal, what they were able to execute when the game was 28-28, we had a pretty good drive, down inside the 3-yard line there, and we chose to pursue a field goal. Doesn't mean you have points, and that ended up being a little more hairy than it needed to be, but he was able to get that ball through the uprights there.
Can you explain kind of the progression of the effectiveness of the fullback in your offense during this season?
Really, Brent, I think you look probably whenever you pick, and we're all a little bit different, but each of the schools that really utilizes a fullback, you probably play your best football when that guy has 20-plus carries, or that position, I should say, rather than that guy, and they're productive ones too. Now, a good number of those carries, I think, are you saying productive's got to be a gain of 5 or 7? Sometimes a really productive carry is converting on a 3rd and 1, or a ball when it's down on the 2-yard line, advancing the ball across the goal line. And really you have to have each of the facets. When I say each of the facets, you're going to have to hit some play-action passes. The ball's got to get to a perimeter. There are going to be times maybe where the quarterback has the ball, but the fullback too.
I get the fullback has carried a lot more recently. What is the difference then? Has it just worked so you're able to go back to it now versus some of those earlier games?
Well, I think probably the earlier games that somebody could also say, if really into the critical route, we say, well, why didn't this guy get more balls on the perimeter? It's kind of, I think you can kind of pick and sway that, how one chooses. Yeah, they have had more carries, recently, and It's invaluable for us to make first downs, as it is for any offense, but I think especially our offense. And, if you took tackles for losses, sacks, and first downs, those are a little bit of measuring sticks. They aren't the end all, but there's some points, I think those items are things that lead to points.
And now traditionally Army runs under center, correct?
Both.
Do they do both?
Mhm.
Okay. Have they done more of the shotgun this year versus?
Yeah, both. Yes, sir.
Okay. Will you be preparing heavily for that, just given the way?
Well,
the
I think for what we've seen on film, yes.
And within a game, obviously, the more you establish the run, the more things open. Is that true for a season? The more effective you are running the ball, does it then, when you game plan, open up more options?
I don't know if I'd necessarily be able to phrase that in that way, and I say that from the standpoint that there still has to be something that's established for a safety to really get involved and to become more involved. And if it's not established, then I think so many of the games that a safety does play with their training, I think tends to, especially whoever the deep player is, whether that's a two-deep team, middle safety, man-free team, or a three-deep team. So, I think sometimes it may take a little more time, even during the course of a game, too.
The reason I ask, your statistics right now are identical to what they were in 2015 through 8 games. And then you had a 3-game stretch where you were as effective passing as you've been since you've been here. Do you see the...
No, that was an anomaly. I mean, I don't want to say it would never happen again, but I think it was I think that was a rarity, quite honestly. And I know to which you're referring was there was a game here, there was a game in Idaho, and then a game in south of here, about 5-6 hours. I think that was
the Army game. You only threw 10 times, but it was for 175, a couple touchdowns. I think it was to the tight end primarily.
Oh, I thought you meant those next 3 games, because there were about the 3 games following that. There was I think that was really, to be frank.
And how would you describe your relationship with Jeff Monken?
Very respectful. I mean, I think the quality that, and really the institution, both schools, the commitment that both schools have to their respective missions, I think it's really, really cool. I think it's one of the rarities in college football, obviously, that there are 3 schools where, the young men and young women, why they choose to go to those schools is because they're willing to serve. And you're a part of that as a coach. Maybe the influence that you have on the cadets, it varies from cadet to each cadet. But I think as coaches, we know that responsibility that's involved.
Okay. And then with a senior quarterback on that side, what advantages running this sort of offense where the quarterback has so many decisions to make do you have when you have a veteran like that?
It helps, I think, no question. Things can happen so instantly that there's just, it's probably a little bit like, oh, God, I don't know what else maybe somebody that's a fighter pilot or perhaps somebody that's a point guard or, somebody that's maybe playing catcher in baseball, where there's an awful lot going on, and yet to make it where you can break it down into certain components and really when you hear to kind of isolate different moves and being able to see a safety's alignment or where a linebacker may be pre-snap, I think it's quite helpful.